Testing. All right. So we have a very interesting topic. And first of all, let me welcome my panels of very distinguished speakers here. Okay, my name is Victor Chow. I'm actually the CEO of Inspirasia. We are actually part of the Russian fund called LifeStreader. LifeStreader has recently relocated to Asia. So we are a $100 million fund that we actually focus on fintech. We only invest in fintech startups. So for the accelerator program, basically it's very simple. We are actually, if we are looking at from the VC angle, we only invest in Series ABC. So if there's any startups that doesn't fit into the Series ABC investment, we will put them through an accelerator program. So our accelerator program is actually the Inspirasia accelerator program. So when any of the startups that graduate from our so-called Inspirasia accelerator program, they will actually move into the Series A kind of investment. So we will do a rather selective kind of investment if they have gone through our program. So maybe on my end, maybe on my background, I actually previously was from a Chinese firm. I used to run Huawei Technologies in the cloud computing space. I was the chief operating officer. So I have a very vast industrial background in the China market. So right now is that I'm coming back to Singapore, to Asia, to look at the opportunities here. And we do have a very well so-called experienced group of speakers here today to join me in this panel discussion to talk about all the startups opportunities in China at the same time in Southeast Asia. So let me move on to the next speaker. Dinesh, please.
Hi, quick introduction. I'm Dinesh, CEO of Trade Hero. We're a fantasy stock trading application. Started in Singapore about just over 2 years ago. About a year ago, we made the move to China and are doing pretty well there. The app is pretty simple. We give prices, live prices to 29 different exchanges. And people trade with virtual dollars. They get validated on the leaderboard, and based on their ROI, you can follow the top leaders, copy trade, social trade in real life. And of course, there's we work with financial institutions to bring the top traders to trade in real life. Lots more exciting things coming on our platform. Very interesting lessons, I guess, I want to share a bit later on with our move and making our China app. We have a China app called Qianming Kushen, which is specifically for China. And the lessons learned from that.
Hey, thanks, Dinesh. Hey, hi, everybody. My name is Tom Tao. I work for Gobi. We were founded in 2002, headquarters in Shanghai. We now manage approximately $500 million. We're on our sixth fund. We've invested in 100 companies across China and Southeast Asia, 19 exits, IPOs and M&A. We've had a number of our companies become billion-dollar hits on NASDAQ, on the domestic stock markets here. We decided to make the move into Southeast Asia by setting up a Singapore office back in 2010. And we strongly believe that Southeast Asia is at a very interesting point, at an inflection point. And we want to do more, and we're going to expand our presence here because we think the two-way capital flows and business flows between Southeast Asia and China, that's going to be one of the most interesting and exciting investment opportunities for the next decade.
Sheiji, I'm the group CMO for e-commerce. We're based in Bangkok. We're an e-commerce enabler, basically providing e-commerce services to brands like L'Oreal, HP, Unilever, but we also work with big retailers like Lazada, Matahari Mall in Indonesia, and Central Group in Thailand. Previously, I worked in China in e-commerce for about 5 years prior to coming to Southeast Asia, and I think if you look at China, there's a lot of lessons to be learned that you can apply in Southeast Asia, and also like looking at China, you will see the opportunity in terms of e-commerce in the next 4 or 5 years in our region.
Hi, William Bean, partner at SOSV, and I run China Accelerator. So I was one of the first equity research analysts covering internet in Asia, starting in 2004, and then I came down into India in 2005, before there were VCs there. So I made the jump from research to VC, running China for SoftBank at SoftBank China India, and then running China for Singtel Innovate for the last 4 years, and just joined SOSV as a 5th partner. So we're the accelerator VC. We have 2 accelerators in China. I run Global Internet, a China accelerator, and then we also have HAX, the #1 hardware accelerator in the world. And our focus is bringing top startups from Southeast Asia into the China and the rest of the world. We also help Chinese companies come down into Southeast Asia. So we're the cross-border accelerator program. Thanks.
Right, I think we have a very interesting topic today, talking about the startup opportunities between Southeast Asia and China. So I think, Dinesh, I think you are one of the most so-called famous startups in Singapore who actually secured a good funding to expand into China. So maybe you can share with us some of your experience, why you decided to go into the Chinese market.
First of all, I have to say there was a tremendous leap of faith by our VCs. They were both China-based VCs, KPCB China and IPV. And we were A, not from China, B, we weren't even in China. We were based here, but I guess they recognized a good product and hopefully a good team as well. And then, based on that Series A, which we concluded at the end of 2013, we moved and into China. We had a successful app in terms of, being on the top 10 and #1 finance app on the finance category in different app stores, and we needed to translate that success to China. It's not that easy. So the first thing we did was we just basically translated the app. That turned out to be a huge failure. We had a very supportive board, and basically they said, well, try again. And we did. We built the app from the ground up, from scratch, and it was not so much just a language translation. We had to undergo a cultural translation. We had a very, very good Chinese team, and when we gave them basically the freedom to rebuild the app, it became extremely, extremely popular. Today we have 300,000 to 400,000 new users coming from China every single month, which is quite phenomenal. Some of the main differences, for example, cultural differences, obviously there's red for up, green for down, rather than the other way around. But in China, we noticed that people like to talk about a decision a lot more before they commit to it. And in Asia, they commit to it based on the data that's available. So we had to bring the social aspects up front and center more before the decision-making process, basically, like the water cooler for stocks and social discussions before they committed to buying a stock. The app in China is called Qianming Husen. It's not called Trade Hero. You have to translate that as well. And it's doing pretty well. Obviously, the Chinese markets now, by capitalization, it's the biggest market in the world. And the China market, the timing has been amazing. The China markets are taking off. And the interest is huge. In China, we target the millennials, and the other difference, which is huge in China, is the marketing approach. You can't just use the same ROW or rest of the world marketing approach. WeChat is, the 8,000-pound gorilla there, not the 800-pound gorilla. And if you know what you're doing, and you can make it work, especially since we're targeting millennials, we use a lot of viral campaigns. And thankfully that worked. That gave us a very low cost of user acquisition. So there are many differences. You have to embrace them. Things move a lot faster in China. Don't be afraid to, I guess, fail. Learn from that. Pick up a lot of data, analytics, and move along and make things work. Very interesting market. China moves extremely fast. But I do think that being in Southeast Asia is definitely a step ahead of coming from the US and trying to launch in China or Europe. I think culturally there is a much better understanding of what needs to be done, that things are different, even between China and Southeast Asia. Singapore, for example, I speak Chinese, but that's not enough. It's the whole mentality, as well as targeting users of a completely different age group, millennials. So you need to take all that into account and be very open to change.
Okay, maybe I just want to pass it to the two gentlemen that's from China, maybe Thomas and William. Maybe you want to share some of your insights, how Chinese think about, startups and how they, yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're more focused on taking international companies into China. So you kind of lend me one of your co-founders for a while. We put them into Shanghai, we build a team around them, and we probably, 95% of the companies that want to go to China probably should not be there. So probably my biggest service is I tell you not to come. But if you're in the 5%, we'll build up a new team we'll probably take your old project and flush it, and we'll create a new project, platform or service, and then we have a number of growth hackers in residence. We have 7 of our mentors that focus on growth hacking WeChat, and every single one of our companies has a content-driven WeChat strategy. Because that allows you to get users for free. They're very targeted and focused. And while WeChat, you might think it's a megalith, there's a lot of holes in it. There's a lot of things that you can do to get users for free to really drive that viral content that Dinesh spoke about without paying for users. China's like a paid market, but WeChat is generally opening things up. So we're making that a huge focus for the companies that we're bringing in.
Thomas, you want to have anything about this?
Yeah, no, I think from our standpoint, from Gobi's standpoint, a lot of our companies are naturally migrating as they look for new markets and growth opportunities. They're spreading out into Southeast Asia as they become big dominant players in China. So for example, one of our companies is a travel company called Tunio, which listed on NASDAQ. Last year, 16% of their gross revenue came from Southeast Asia, and Tunio, is actively looking to partner with and work with domestic OTAs that can supply more interesting travel products to this growing Chinese middle class that now doesn't just want to go on a group tour with the guy, waving the flag, doing the pre-planned shopping trips, but they want more experiential driven, more unique travel experiences, and they're looking to come to Southeast Asia. One of our other companies, Camera 360, in fact, is working or trying to work with e-commerce. Camera 360 is one of the most popular mobile apps in the world. They have 500 million users. Close to 100 million is based in Southeast Asia. So they just signed a partnership in the Philippines with Smart, and they are actively looking to partner with local players in Southeast Asia because their user growth in Southeast Asia has been completely organic. They haven't spent a dime on marketing. So those are some of the reasons why we're looking at Southeast Asia and some of the opportunities that we're seeing.
Yeah, so most of the Chinese look at Southeast Asia as kind of like low-hanging fruit. So they're the #1 mobile-first, mobile-only market in the world. The mobile innovation is coming out of there, and they're very well capitalized. China is one of the most competitive markets in the world, and they're looking at Southeast Asia market entry as an easy way to expand because the local players are generally weak. So that's how they're looking at it, and they don't play fair. So it's going to be an interesting competitive dynamic across Southeast Asia.
Maybe before we move on to the next speaker, I just want to mention is that if any of the audience have any questions, can you please use the Pigeonhole apps to post any questions? Then I'll actually direct them to the speakers later. Okay, then the other thing is that what we're going to do right now is that we will move to the other aspect of how these companies from other parts of Asia or from China moving to Southeast Asia. So maybe Seiji can actually share some of his experience. Yeah.
I think I used to work in China back in 2008. So if you look at the real low-hanging fruit opportunity, and I'm a little bit biased here, right? Because I work in e-commerce. Back in 2008, retail e-commerce penetration in China was about like 1 point something percent, right? So if you look at Southeast Asia today, it's the same percentage, right? But today, China, if you look at the number, they're going to overtake Europe this year as the country with the biggest e-commerce penetration rate, like globally, right? So in 5 years, China has grown from like a developing country into like the e-commerce powerhouse. And if you look at the e-commerce landscape, the landscape in general in China and Southeast Asia, they're very similar, right? So they kind of like skipped out on like Web 1.0, Web 1.5. So people jump straight into like social media, right? So as a result, there's not much long-tail publisher inventory, both in China and especially in Southeast Asia, right? So because of that, like you look at the markets, they're very commerce-driven. They're not like advertising-driven like we're used to in the US, right? So you look at Tencent, 80% revenue from VAS plus e-commerce, right? 20% or even less than 20% from advertising. So projecting the 5 years, the last 5 years in China into Southeast Asia, there you will see the opportunity in e-commerce. We're just getting started, right? So China today, JD.com, 20-something% market share, Tmall over 50%. In Southeast Asia, you have Lazada, like estimated to be about like 20%. So it's still early, right? Back in the days, China, Dangdang, maybe 15% in 2008, and today less than 2%, right? So we're just starting out in e-commerce in Southeast Asia, and if you want to come in early, like the time is to come in right now.
Okay, I think that's very good. You got any views? Any one of you?
I'm actually very interested in your comment, William, where you say Chinese companies moving out to Southeast Asia, they're going to play dirty and watch out. I think that's correct.
Yeah, I mean, Trojan horse strategy. So you probably have like all these battery saver apps and security apps in your phone. They're free, they work. It's like a Trojan horse to take over your phones. So that's where you start. And then once you're in the phone, you can do all sorts of interesting things. So mostly, I don't know, you probably don't even know that like these apps that you're using to save your battery life are Chinese apps designed to suck all the data out of your phone and learn about you. But it's like, first step. Second step is use that as a cross-promotion platform to spam you with other apps. And then the third step is turning on monetization. And that's market by market across the world. Most people don't know that like a lot of the apps on their phones are coming out of China.
Okay, maybe now we move the angle to the investor point of view. Okay, why are investors coming to Asia? There's a lot of reasons behind it, because right now the entire startup scene is actually picking up, and all the funds, all the money are all in Asia. Maybe this is from my angle of the being a Russian fund, why we decided to relocate to Asia. Because in the fintech space, the most number of unbanked customers are actually in Asia. So that's the reason why we decided to relocate our entire fund to Asia. So we are looking at Asia investment right now for any fintech startups. So I think for the others as investors here from SOS Ventures and Gobi, I think they have similar thoughts as well. Maybe on the Thomas side, you want to share something? Why are you looking at Asia right now? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't take as dire a view as William, and I'm not sure there's that secret conspiracy going on, but hey, who knows, right? I would say this, though, that I do think Southeast Asia is going to become a very interesting marketplace for entrepreneurs that can build companies that can scale across the region. Okay, it's something we've been saying since 2010. We may have been a little early, but look, it's going to happen. And here's what's going to happen, right? The US tech companies really have challenges getting into China, right? The Chinese companies right now are all trying to go to the US. I think they're going to experience the same challenges that the US companies had coming into China. So that'll take a year, maybe 2 years to play out, right? Eventually, the Chinese companies will start looking, as they need to have market growth, they will look south. The US companies will look south, and the Japanese big internet companies, aren't going to get into China because it's so competitive, and they'll look south as well. So if you've built a company that's positioned correctly, you should be at the center of a nice bidding war in a couple of years, and I'd like to be right there with you. So if you've got that company, please look me up. I will be there, or my colleagues. We'd love to come find you and fund you, because that's the opportunity, and that's why we're here. We know most of the big BAT companies. We know they're starting to allocate capital here to Southeast Asia. And it's also the Japanese companies and the US companies. But building a company that can scale and have a sizable digital footprint across the region, and I think you're seeing companies like A-Commerce doing that, those are going to be very, very valuable companies. I always hear people tell me, but Tom, on the flip side, ASEAN, it's so fragmented. There's so many religions, cultures, ethnicities. It's so hard. And my answer to that is, precisely because it's hard, that's why those companies are going to become more valuable. So I think if you're sitting out in the audience and you can build great local teams that can scale across all the countries in ASEAN and make sure it works as one company, one team, that will become a very valuable asset.
So I don't think it's actually a conspiracy, but it's a very competitive market. So if you study the Xiaomi model, they have a phone and they control everything on that phone. They have a group of VCs that invest in most of the apps on the phone, and for each category they have one favorite app. So it's an ecosystem play. And when they start expanding out of China, you got to assume that they're going to do that. One of our companies took that same model out to the rest of Asia 3 years ago. So if you're going to be, fighting Chinese, you actually probably need Chinese techniques to fight them. And we're trying to be the arms merchant, try and keep things open. We want startups to have a chance to succeed because we're investing in 130 companies a year, and I want to have an open playing field. For China Accelerator, one of our companies, we have about 70 million Androids in Southeast Asia, about 20% of the market in India, and we can do push notification, 15% Indonesia, 10 Malaysia, about 15% of the smartphones in Thailand are under our control. And the key thing is being able to push out across these markets. And that's one of the major reasons why a lot of Chinese companies and Southeast Asian companies are working with China Accelerator. It's that kind of a help to get to scale very quickly and to have what I call like unfair advantage. China is definitely not fair. Southeast Asia is not going to be fair very, very long. You need to have unfair advantage.
All right. Okay, so I think what we're going to do is that we're going to move to some of the audience questions. As you can see from the screen right here, we have very interesting questions. Is what are the major barrier entries to China? So maybe any of the speakers.
From our perspective, obviously, you have to set up as a wholly owned foreign enterprise. We came from Singapore as a local entity. You may need to procure certain licenses. In our case, as an app, we didn't need to because we transacted directly with the app stores. They call it APP over there. But one of the things I think that we needed to do if you want to address the B2C Chinese market is get your infrastructure right in China. We use a hosted cloud computing system, Azure or AWS. We use Azure, and we needed it inside the firewall. So we had to have a complete different. We have a synced model where we have a setup inside of China and outside of China. Access times are much better that way. Don't rely on the infrastructure outside. Think very, very carefully about that. For me, that was pretty important.
There's not too many examples, or almost no examples, of international internet companies that have been successful in China. For the big guys, they come in, they're undercapitalized versus the international player, the local players coming in backed by a lot of VC money. The other thing is you got people from Mountain View whispering in their ear, telling them what to do, but the people in Mountain View don't have a clue. The third thing is they're set up differently. So in Beijing or most of the startups, they have like a 9-9-6 rule, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week as normal working hours, and they take 5 days of holiday a year. And the Europeans especially, but even American companies don't really work that way. So just starting out of the gate, you're undercapitalized, you're not working as very hard, and you don't understand the market. You've got somebody whispering in your ear, telling you to do stupid things. So the number one thing is to have on-the-ground command and control. Get your strategy, but let the execution and tactics be decided on the ground. I wouldn't try and blow a lot of money up front, but take a lean approach, figure out what works, and then follow it. And then partners generally don't work, and JVs almost never work. So stay away from those.
So one of the other things that just came to mind are copycats. You have prolific, if people think your model works, even if they get a hint of it. We were part of the Microsoft Venture Accelerator program. As we moved into China, we hadn't even launched our Chinese app, and because it came out in the Chinese press, 2 or 3 months later, there were 2 or 3 copycats, and they literally copied us all the way from the skinning process, the UI process. So you have to very much be aware of that. You need to continue to innovate. Just take pride in the fact that if someone copied you, it's probably a good business model, but you really need to address that very, very hard.
Yeah, if somebody's not copying you in China, you probably suck.
I think to William's point, right? China is a very cutthroat market. Like people work very hard. They hardly sleep. If you look at Southeast Asia, like the challenge we have here is like finding good people, finding hardworking people, right? So if you have a choice between China and staying in Southeast Asia, the market is very big, right? Go for Southeast Asia, because if you go to China, like you better be prepared, right? So our founder Paul, he put it this way. He said like in Southeast Asia you can bring your B game and still be an A player, right? You cannot do that in China.
Right. There's another few questions I think here is what type of startups are likely to be successful in China? So, okay.
So as I took over China Accelerator 7 months ago, and I've been a mentor for a long time, and I rocked up, and we're a bunch of foreigners in China running an English program. We're screwed. Okay, so we don't, the locals generally always win. So what's our advantage? Well, generally we have a lot more B2B than consumer, because generally international players understand B2B better. Most of the purchasers of business services are multinationals, and we can launch in China and then scale across Asia. We're heavy on education. Okay, because Chinese believe that international education is much better than Chinese education, which is generally true. We do focus on media, and then we are heavily focused on e-commerce. And we tie the media to e-commerce. So China is way far ahead of most of the rest of the world in that you can actually buy stuff inside the social network. You can't do that on Facebook, you can't do that on Twitter. As far as I know, you can't do that anywhere except for China. So we're taking media, engaged communities, and then we're selling them lots of things. And that's, in the last 7 months, invested in 15 companies focused on that. So this sort of phase 2 commerce. And you should pay attention to it, because right now most of the e-commerce players in Southeast Asia are like 1.0. It's like a Taobao, Tmall, list of products and a bunch of prices, and lowest price wins. But Tom's point about the experience, China is going for the experience, the lifestyle, and they want unique things, and they want education, and I think that's a trend that Southeast Asia can learn from and roll out.
I'm just going to add to that. I think, look, the key, if you want to be, I think, just to summarize, I think what everybody's been saying is, if you're going to go to China, it's going to be difficult. You can either choose to do it yourself, and you can pay a lot of tuition fees, but I think what everybody on the panel is saying is, the startups that are going to be successful are the ones that are going to be willing to seek out help and know what you don't know. The guys here on this panel, we've been through it, right? Let's see, I've been sued, and I've sued many people in China, and we've won. Not something that I'd like to go through again, but again, that's where I think if you find the right partner, whether it's Gobi or someone else, that's really the key. Find partners and mentors that can help you navigate what can sometimes be very treacherous waters in China, and vice versa. If you're a Chinese company, I'm sure coming to Southeast Asia isn't the easiest thing. Again, that's why partnerships, open collaboration, recognizing that you don't know everything, I think that's the key to a successful startup. And it's not just in China, it's anywhere.
Right, thanks Thomas. Okay, I think there's another very interesting question. Are there opportunities for Southeast Asians or Singaporeans to work in startups company in China? I believe that there's plenty of opportunities, right?
To work in startup companies in China, I don't know, William. I wouldn't. You might want to answer that one. For me, I'd rather work with Chinese to work in China. I'll be very blunt about that.
Yeah. So if you're focused on the China market, you should probably have China people. The great thing about foreigners in China is they're a great source of low-cost labor. Okay. So because nobody will hire them.
It's not so low cost anymore now.
It's for foreigners. Yeah, it's pretty low cost. So actually, if you want, foreign programmers, foreign designers, they don't speak Chinese. They're basically screwed. So you can get them at way below market and what they would get in any other market. So Shanghai So when my grandmother was young, everyone went to Paris. When my father was young, everyone went to New York. And now every idiot in the world wants to go to Shanghai and party. So we get actually a lot of international people working for way under market. It's not that bad a place to do an international startup. So based in China, but focused on the world. And we're increasingly seeing that. Taiwan's not that bad either. Taiwan engineers are paid a lot less than Chinese engineers. There's some tricks in order to get their effectiveness and productivity up. But there is an opportunity to go to Shanghai to work. You probably just won't be working on a startup, focused on the China market.
Can I answer that? I think I take a slightly different view. I think absolutely there are opportunities. If you look at the history of China's venture industry, many of the key firms have been built by Singaporeans who took what they learned in Singapore and then brought that to China, right? So many Singaporeans, went from either Temasek or like the old the technology funds, went to China, applied their expertise there, and really helped build China's VC ecosystem. And if you look at some of the big companies like Qunar, one of the co-founders is from Malaysia, Douglas Koo, and we've co-invested with him on a deal that's yet to be announced. So I still think there are a lot of opportunities, but really the key is to find your core competitive advantage. If you're going to go to China, as I think Williams alluded to, you don't go because you speak some Chinese. I mean, in China, 1.3 billion people speak Chinese, and that doesn't help them get a job. So you got to bring something more, and really understanding your key competitive advantage is absolutely critical, because in China now, everything's moving up to being world class. So whatever you're doing, if it's world class in whatever that skill is, and on top of that, you speak a little Chinese, that will help you. But if you're just going in saying, well, I learned some Chinese in school, and that's good enough for me to get a job in China, I think that may have worked maybe, 15 years? I don't think that works anymore, right?
So there's various definitions of foreigner in China, but out of, I don't know, a couple thousand companies that have gone public, 2 had foreign CEOs. And I'm taking out some of the Taiwanese guys, okay? So it's not like a super high hit rate, but there is opportunity there.
Okay, I think we are running out of time, so I think maybe if you all have any last words that you want to share with the audience, or maybe some advice, just to wrap up the whole session. Yeah.
I just want to say, I think there is one area that's that is very opportunistic in China. Again, speaking from my own experience, I think that's the fintech area. I think the globally that entire industry is ripe for disruption, and more so in China, where the banking system is very archaic, and that position of building the relationships with the users and offering them financial services is happening in China. And this is one area where China is possibly leading the way globally. The digital disruption that's happening there in fintech is unbelievable. For example, there are 2,000, there are over 2,000 P2P companies there just doing people-to-people loans. So there's a lot of stuff that can happen, especially because the system is slightly behind, and you jump a certain generation. And I guess, as Thomas says, if you can bring something to the table there, because of what you know outside, there is a lot of opportunity in China.
So, Seiji, you have anything to say about some last words?
Yeah, I think, again, if you look at Southeast Asia and China, I think you're sitting on a huge opportunity here, right? So China's very hard. So before looking at China, look around you, right? Indonesia have a huge market, Philippines coming up, right? Thailand's very big, right? So a lot of opportunity here. It's also an open market, right? So it's an open ecosystem, not like China where it's kind of like shielded from the rest of the world, right? So it's more complicated if you go to China. So try Southeast Asia.
Yeah, if you want to grab 10 minutes of time, I can tell you really quickly whether I think you should come to China or not. And if so, I'll give myself a plug. We have batch 8 starting soon for our accelerator. We give out $55,000 to $75,000, which I think is the #1 in Asia for accelerators. And we'll try and do China right. Thanks.
All right, that's good. Okay, on my end is that I think I agree with Dinesh about fintech is actually growing. I'm also running an accelerator that's going to happen in September. So we are looking about 10 to 20 startups that if you are keen to apply for this program, let us know because it's a 50K to 300K kind of investment to these startups. So I hope that what we have shared today is something that actually give you a better insights about the Chinese market, at the same time the Southeast Asian market. So in China, go in prepared. Be unique. Try not to be a copycat, but try to be very unique and protect your intellectual property when you are into the Chinese market. And for the Southeast Asian markets, I think everybody knows that that's why you are here, right? Because we know that Southeast Asia is booming. The funds are all coming into Southeast Asia. So do work hard on your startups. And I think if you need to get some good investments, talk to a few of us here who are the accelerators and investors who can help you to springboard to the next market that you are going to. All right, so I think today, we will end this session here. Thank you for everyone for listening to us. And thank you the speakers to join us today. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, panel.